welcome back. I wanted to show you what I'm up against with the seat here. So this is a pretty typical solo seat mount. The fellow who did it did a nice job. I see what he was doing. It worked out pretty well. The seat works well. There's just a couple things with it that I think can be a little bit tidier, and I thought I'd show you what I'm going to do, and then I'll show you how I've made the pieces for this, or how I'm going to make the pieces for this. But let me start by explaining. So there is a bolt at the front of the seat, runs all the way through the frame, and they did a really nice job here. Instead of just drilling holes through the frame, they actually put a sleeve in there. They put a tube in there, TIG welded it, then ground it smooth. You can see the outline of where the tube is, but you can't feel the tube, and it's welded in there nice and tight. So really nice job of making that mount. The problem with it is that it allows for movement, and there you can probably see that, side to side. So this part of the seat mount, the bracket, is wider than the frame. So it has a bunch of slop in it. Now you could take it up with flat washers, I guess, if you wanted to stuff them in there while you were trying to get the bolt in. What was done mainly here is that they had just tightened up this bolt to the point where it flexed the tabs in tight enough to pinch on the frame, it's okay, it worked, but again it would scratch the frame, which I don't want to do with the new paint job, and you're using a lot of friction there to have the you're creating more friction to give the seat more suspension. So it's just kind of artificially doing things, and it just, I learned as a young man. I'll never forget what Sandy McKenzie taught me at McKenzie Custom. He said, the three most important things about building motorcycles or hot rods is detail, detail, and detail. And that's the kind of stuff that I do like to do. So I looked at this, and you know what, let me pull this seat off so you can see more of this. I'm just going to do that at the back, and then pull that out so you can see what that mount looks like. It's a pretty simple deal. I think what I've seen before, I've seen either a mounting kit or mounts done where they actually weld a tube on top of the frame. Part of why I don't want to do that is because the seat already has me pitched back a little bit. It's not bad, and it's going to get a lot better when we lower the front end on this thing. But I don't want to keep raising the front of the seat, and I do like what the guy did with the mount to get it down closer to the backbone here. It just gave it a nicer profile and everything. So I don't want to mount it up higher. I need flat surfaces to the outside here to make a pivot point on that mount. So originally I thought, well, maybe I could weld something in here that would be curved to fit the backbone. And then I realized, well, that won't work, because when that tries to pivot, I'll try and do that better for you. When that tries to pivot, it's going to be rocking into the frame, so that's no good. Whatever you do has to be on the frame side, I think. I haven't come up with a way to fix it by doing anything there. So I thought about it, and I had some nice bungs here that I bought from Lowbrow, and what I've done, and I'm going to show you a close-up of this, don't worry about this right now. But basically I've cut one bung into two to make two of these, and I took some time and went to my multi-tool belt grinder there, and I was able to cope this a little bit. And it's not a perfect fit. The radius on my belt grinder is not the same as the radius on the backbone here. But you know what? It's pretty close, and I'll be able to, a little bit of creative tigging, I'll be able to fill the gap and make it right. So basically what I'm doing is I've coped that so that now when it's up snug to the frame, it gives me a flat surface. And these pieces are not very big. It only needed at the least point, if you will, it only needed like 1/8 of an inch on each side, so it wasn't a huge gap. But I needed something that would give me a little bit of a radius there to try and match up to this. So the plan is, I'm going to show you how I made this one. I did the first one just to make sure it would work. I'm going to show you how I did that by making the second one. Then I think what I'm going to use here is a piece of threaded rod, because with a piece of threaded rod I can thread it into both sides at the same time. That's going to have everything in line. With a piece of threaded rod in there and a couple nuts just to lock everything down, keep it tight, I'll be able to go in and tack weld this in place, make sure it's going to work. The other nice thing about what I'm doing here is originally, you know, the way this is done, this bolt stuck through. You know, it's a nice chrome fastener and everything, that's good. But I wasn't real happy with the thread hanging out over here. So now these pieces are threaded. I can use chrome button heads like I'm using on the rest of the bike, one from each side. So it's going to be just a nice smooth head on either side. You're not going to have any thread sticking out. You know, if this works out, I won't even have to use an acorn nut or anything on one side. It'll just be two separate screws, one from each side, to mount the seat. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm going to show you how I make that piece. I'm going to take a couple close-up pictures here and put them in the video as well. And that's going to take care of the seat. Okay, so to make those pieces to fix the seat mount there, what I had from Lowbrow, and I'm just going to see if I can show you this. This is just a, I don't know what you would call this. It's just a flat bung. This is a 5/16 coarse thread. Pretty straightforward. This is a 1/2 inch wide. So on that seat, what I needed was at the tightest point, I needed about 1/8 of an inch. Actually, probably 7/64 is about what I need there. So, but I needed the curve to follow the radius of the backbone. So what I did is I took one of those bungs, cut it in half with a hacksaw. One of those times I wish I had a lathe, but you know what? I don't know about you guys, you can't have everything at home. The big builders can. I got to make do with what I have. So what I did was cut that in half, came up with 2 separate pieces, and then I took a 5/16 coarse bolt, threaded it in, had a lock nut on there, I locked it down, and let me just see if I can get it lined up again. Close enough. So I locked it down, and that gave me a way to hold on to that thing while I took it to the belt grinder. So I took it to the belt grinder and started from the one side and just you know, just used the curve of the radius wheel, and I'll show you that in a minute. And got as much curve on there as I could. Made enough of a flat at what would be the bottom to sit against the frame. And as I said, using a threaded rod now to go right through and hold both sides at the same time, the threaded rod is going to keep things straight up and down, nice and square. I'll get in there, tack it up. If I have to give it a little adjustment, I should be able to do that. And then once I have the frame on the bench here, I'll be able to roll it over and get in there and take it all the way around and make a nice weld. Well, decent weld. So that's how I'm doing that. Yeah, you know what? Let me set up the other one here, and I'll move the camera over and I'll show you how I ground it. It's pretty simple stuff, but I'll show you anyway. All right, back in a minute. All right, here we are. We're ready to, I don't know if I'm in the frame or not there. We're ready to have at this. A couple of cautionary notes. Always make sure you got your safety glasses. I don't know if everybody out there knows, but you can get safety glasses now in, I don't know, they're not bifocals, but with a magnifier at the bottom here. Man, oh man, for a guy like me, that's a lifesaver. I love these things because I can see what I'm doing close up when I look through the bottom of the lens. So don't forget your safety glasses. Gloves are a really good idea because I'm here to tell you this thing's going to get hot. Now, maybe it won't if you take your time and keep resting, but I found the other day it gets pretty warm. And the other thing is, I usually put a hat on just to keep from getting all this grinding stuff in my hair. So I usually throw my hat on when I'm grinding, doing stuff like that. So I'll show you how I shape this. So of course I'm going to grind the cut side, and I'm just going to pick what I want to be the top and bottom. Looks like I have a little more material on this side. Maybe my hacksaw wasn't perfectly straight, so I'm just going to start at it here. And I want to see what I'm doing now on this bottom edge. So I'm turning that over. You can see there I'm starting to get a nice cope on there, a little bit of roundness to it. My thickness is coming down. I'm still probably more than I need. So I'm just going to thin it out some more and get some more curve to that, some more radius to it. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to, at this point, I think what I'm going to do is go over and put that against the frame, run the bolt in, and just see, you can tell by the smoke that I was right, it does get a little bit hot. And I'm just going to see how that one fits up, if it fits up anything like the other side. And tomorrow I'll find time to run out and get a piece of threaded rod or a real long bolt without a shoulder at the one end, enough thread to get all the way through. So yeah, we'll be back with more. Thanks. So where we left off last night is we had ground this down, put a little bit of a radius on there. This is one of the bungs that I'm going to use for mounting the seat. What I'm going to do here now, I put this lock nut on it just for while I was grinding, so I had something to hang on to. And I got it on there really good. There we go. Okay. So now, I'm going to back that off of there. And there's our two pieces. Hopefully you can see that okay. So we have finished side out, the flat side. I ground the cut side. Now what I need to do, I've got those two. So now I picked up some threaded rod today. I'm going to throw my soft jaws. I have, these are like a polyurethane material that I picked up at Princess Auto, which probably makes no sense to you American guys, but that's okay. So just cheap jaws. It just protects your work. When you're doing something like this, I'm just going to make a hacksaw cut on this, so I'll throw it in the vise. I don't want to chew up the threads for no reason. There we go. So I marked this already. I'm just going to make a quick cut here. So now that I've cut that off, I need to be able to thread one of those on each side. Well, the factory end shouldn't be a problem. This end that I just cut, they're always ugly. I'm going to just step over to the grinder here for a second. I'm going to put a quick grind on here. Okay, so I ground that end a bit. I want to show you something else. Again, you know, if you're familiar with these, don't let me offend you. But if you're not familiar with rethreaders, I'm a big fan of rethreading taps and dies. And I'll show you this kit, hopefully without dropping it all over the floor. This kit's available from a bunch of different suppliers. This particular one came from Mac Tools. There you go, it says Mac Tools right on the front. Snap-on has them. I'm sure, you know, Harbor Freight, anybody like that has this kit. I think they're all made by the same company. I think they're made by, I think it's American Standard. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So, rethreaders. The reason I'm big on rethreaders, I don't own a tap and die set. Problem with taps and dies is they are meant to cut material. And even when you're running them through existing threads, what will happen is they will cut a little bit more material. Now, I don't know if you've ever used a tap on threads in, an example, an engine block. A friend of mine did this years ago. Ran a tap through all the threads for the head bolts into the block. Went to put the thing together. Well, the bolts are loose and it won't take any torque. And I said, "What did you do to these threads?" Well, he ran a tap through them and it actually cut material away and made the threads really sloppy. They were out of tolerance now. Rethreaders are not, they don't have a cutting edge. They're not designed to cut material. What they're designed to do, if you take a look at the edge of them, they're actually designed to either clean loose stuff out and to reform or push the thread back into place. That's basically how they work. So you'll never cut material away with a rethreader. And I always like to, anything that I'm putting together, you know, to clean it up, if I have to reuse a bolt, or in this case, after cutting that, these bungs, after I cut them, and I might have to do it with this latest one, just run a rethreader through, and it just cleans up the threads, and if there's a burr on there or something, it just kind of pushes it out of the way. And you won't do any damage. So unless you're going to tap a hole for some reason on the brake bracket, we did that 5/16 National Fine thread in a hole we drilled there. So I went and got the right size drill, letter size drill, and bought a really good tap, and we tapped that. It's the only tap I own right now because it's the only one I've ever used. Rethreaders will do a much nicer job. So, and way cheaper too. Probably, I'm gonna guess, a quarter to a third of the cost of a tap and die set, maybe even a bit less. So those are what I use. Like I say, unless you're actually cutting new threads, I think every guy, every hobbyist, every apprentice, one of the first things you should have is a rethreading set. This one does metric, national fine, and national course standard. So now I've got these ready. I've got my threaded rod ready. I should be hopefully all set here. I'm going to move the camera over to the bike. We're going to put this in place and see how it works out. Back in a minute. Okay, so I took a little bit more off of each of these. And now what I'm going to do again is I'm going to hold this side. And I'm going to try and catch the first thread I can on the other side. Oh, and I think I got it right there. That worked out pretty well. There's not a lot of play in there. That's pretty darn good. So now, what that does for me is by having the threaded rod through there, I know those are lined up, I know they're level, because there's a little bit of wiggle room in there, but not much, and I think when I tack them, I'm probably just going to give this a little bit of a pull up to the top of the play, because again, it'll just keep the front of the seat up just so it's not rubbing on the frame here. And sure enough, that slides over there now. It's tight, but I've still got some paint on here. By the time I clean this up, you know, I can touch that up with the grinder a bit. I think I'm pretty happy with that just the way it is. So I think what I'll do now, I have to clean this side up a bit. I'm going to clean it up, put it back in place again, and then I'm going to hit it with a couple tack welds so those are in place, and we should be good to go. So that's how we're going to fix that pivot problem. All right, we'll see you soon. So the first tack I put on there is probably a little bit bigger than what I needed, but my first hit didn't go that nicely. One on the other side went just the way I'd like to see it. Now I'm going to take the threaded rod out, set the seat on here, make sure everything's good, and then once I have this on the bench, I might fatten this side up a little bit just so it doesn't get dinged and moved or worse, broken off. So I may add one more tack there, but if the seat fits and everything, then once I have everything apart and I have it on the bench, I can roll it over, do what I need to do, and I can finish it all the way around. So that was a little tight coming out, probably because I sucked it up with the nuts here, tightened it up so it was against the frame real well. Not going to be a problem though, because I think we're going to be able to run separate bolts on each side, and I'll test that right now as well. Beautiful. Seat fits over top of those real nice. Okay, there we go. Springs are on. Mount works beautifully at the front. This front mount is nicely done on the frame. That tube goes all the way through. We know it's strong. Everything there is good. Now what I need to do is build that mount off of the side for the speedometer. So I'm going to dig into that next. Like I say, I think I'll probably throw one more tack weld on that other side just so it can't move. This side's got a nice big one on it, so I know it's not going anywhere. And we'll move on. All right, see you soon.